Welcome to the Greenside Podcast, where we unravel the inspiring narrative of creative and innovative people behind the industry of landscape architecture. I'm your host, Graciela Martin, and in today's interview, we have a fascinating guest who has spent over a decade shaping the industry. In this conversation, we dive deep into the unexpected journey of Chris Landau, exploring how he stumbled into the world of landscape architecture and found himself working for renowned figures like Laurie Olin. With over 11 years of experience in the field, our guest shares the challenges, the triumphs, and the evolution of their role from an artist to a tech innovator in the landscape design realm. Join us as we unravel the determination that led Chris to revolutionize the way we perceive and interact with landscapes, that showcases the power of interdisciplinary thinking and the endless possibilities within the world of design. By the way, if you're in Minneapolis for the ASLA conference, find him at the Expo Hall on booth 947. If you see him, ask him who his hero was growing up. Today, we have a very special guest, Chris Landau. Thanks so much for just coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to have you and to interview you. And I'm just going to also allow you to introduce yourself and just tell everyone what you do and who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm Chris Landau, principal of Landau Design and Technology and creator of LandKit. And I have a background as an artist. I went to art school. I have a BFA and an MFA from University of Michigan. That's the MFA. I somehow found myself very quickly in landscape architecture at Olin in about 2007 and was there for 11 years before I decided to start Landau Design and Technology. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. And I think that is so interesting. Like interviewing people now, I'm kind of like, wow, there's just different kinds of people within the industry. And like there's people who start off into it and then, continue on working at a firm, or there's people who have had no experience in it and still stumble upon it. And I mean, you worked for Laurie Olin, that's kind of a big deal, That was actually the very first face I encountered when trying to learn landscape architecture. I went on YouTube and I was like, who's this Laurie Olin guy? And he pretty much told the listener and me what it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. So that's really neat that you have that experience for 11 years, you said.
Yes. Yeah. Laurie is magical. He's always seems to arrive at an answer that just seems like the most amazing design idea. It sort of seems to come fully formed out of his head. For years, he would just hand draw the sections and the plans and things, and just ideas would be I think he works through things in a sketchbook, and he really does ponder on things before he arrives on the scene.
Yeah. Right.
But he would always come up with solutions that were really incredible. They're just a really brilliant guy. But Olin is, now is really, in much of my time there was a lot of others as well. A lot of really, really, really sharp people, partners and the associates. And there was, a big firm like that, you have a fair number of people coming in and going out. It's just sort of part of the business. And it was neat. I got to meet a lot of really cool people.
I would imagine a lot of visionaries, a lot of people that just had great ideas. And even for you to be working there, I mean, so you started in art, that was your major. You were able to get your foot in the door as an artist, and that makes total sense. But you don't see that often. So how did that happen? How did that happen?
I think there were some interesting circumstances. So the first thing was that I wasn't applying for the job that I got. I was applying for an imaging specialist job. Ironically, anybody who knows Sahar Costin Hardy was the one who got that job.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Very cool.
And she was way more qualified for it than I was. But I applied for that job just because I thought Olin looked cool, and I knew that I could do digital imaging stuff, but I was not a photographer. And I brought my portfolio. Well, I sent my portfolio in just to sort of, for good measure, because I was an art student and or recent art graduate, and that was sort of what you did. And they said, hey, we might have another another thing for you that might be a little bit better, more appropriate for you. And so they saw what I could do with the computer, but also with hand drawing, and said, we could use you to do graphics. And the role
Mm.
wasn't completely defined. And so I was going in for an interview that for a job description that wasn't written yet.
Mm.
And
Wow. Wow.
yeah, but the funny thing was, is I had just completed a project to do a virtual campus for the University of Michigan Medical School in Second Life, which was this online virtual world,
Oh
sort of like
yeah, Second
the
Life.
first
Yes.
metaverse. Yeah.
Yes. I remember that.
And yeah, and so, but what's funny about that is I was designing the layout of the island, the the buildings themselves, how they functioned, and thinking through all of that. And I had drawings and I had diagrams and all of these things. And they were like, look, we see that this guy can do these things and that he's learning them kind of
Mm.
on his own. So, but I had a lot to learn at
Yeah.
Olin. I had a ton to learn. There
Mm.
was a lot of software I did not know that is used now, and that was used then that I didn't know either. And also learning. Oh, there's a crow just went by my window.
I was like, was that a crow?
He's telling me to pipe down. And then also my my knowledge of landscape architecture was rather thin. I had in grad school studied technology and the environment as kind of a topic. And
Mm.
so I had a similar understanding of the
Mhm.
profession, and
Yes.
some
Yep.
not the so much less about the profession and more about the mechanics of looking at of the landscape, and thinking about, you know through the lens of land art and the built environment, and technology and how it exists in the world around us, and things like that. And then so I was sort of primed for kind of learning more about the profession of landscape architecture, but I didn't really know about
Mm.
landscape architecture when I started. So I feel very fortunate to have kind of landed in that spot in that time. And I tried my best to learn everything I could as quickly as I could when I
Yeah.
was there, because I didn't want that opportunity to disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you really succeeded. I mean, 11 years at a firm is amazing. I mean, right out of school, right?
Pretty much. I had started, part of the reason I think that there was some confidence in me as someone who didn't go to landscape architecture school is that I had, right out of grad school, started my own business, and I
Mm.
was doing 3D interactive stuff for people. Our idea was that we would do stuff for exhibits, and I had a partner, Jamie Cope from University of Michigan, and we were building some interactive web things. And so there was a lot of design in that, and it was 3D, it was design, it was a lot of things that were kind of exciting, but also the fact that I was running a business and I had kind of taken that leap and was working with clients and things, I think helped with my, as I said, credibility,
Right. Yeah.
when applying at Olin. Yeah.
Wow. And so, as an artist, I guess learning all this new technology and learning this new profession and all that, did you ever feel like, it was sort of a difficult transition, or were you just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to learn this. It's going to be, you know, not easy, but I'm just going to go for it and learn it, kind of thing, or,
Yeah.
you know, like the
I was
transition.
terrified.
Yeah.
I was absolutely terrified. You know,
Yeah.
the stakes felt very high because I felt like we were, working on these big projects that
Yeah. Yeah.
people were paying a lot of money for and
Yep.
what
Yep.
have you. And you know, that was definitely, definitely a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess I was just either brave enough or dumb enough to just keep going forward and you know and
Yeah.
and do it.
Yeah,
But
and do it. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. Very cool. And so being in that industry for 11 years, now you're at Landau, you're making, you're offering tech, tech services for pretty much landscape, design or any designer. And so what do you feel like, you saw in the industry missing that Landau or the Land Kit offers to the industry, that kind of offers to the table, something new to the table,
yes, absolutely. I think there's a couple things, and these things kind of emerged. It wasn't super obvious. It wasn't like I worked at Olin and I said, "Oh, this is all broken." And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think they're very good at what they do at Olin, and but some of the things that started to emerge were the way that we take things into account and then put things into order.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
how do we kind of analyze a site and document different aspects of that site? And many times that would be a bunch of diagrams that were separate,
Mm.
and you go through that process, and then you would some other month or some other time like go and do the design, and sometimes those things felt disconnected, and it was sort
Mm.
of like, well, we analyzed this, so why aren't we following that? And it's not, it would just be little details or things like that that I would recognize. And I think that was one thing, and then another was this excitement about computational design.
Right.
And one of the things that I was constantly being asked to do was build 3D models of sites. Like that was a big job that I had to create renderings. And so, because anytime we had more than one view of a site, my argument was always like, we should build a model, because if you're going to look at it from a few different angles, a model,
It's perfect for that. Yeah.
it's worth the time of putting in to build the model. And
Right.
we got sort of faster and faster at building models by building workflows and tools that helped us to do that more quickly.
Mm.
And at first I had taken a Grasshopper workshop with the director of IT, Chris Hanley. He's one of the partners,
Mm.
and we did this workshop with Mode Lab. Just it was like an intro Grasshopper workshop, and Chris had done a few already, and thought I could benefit from it. And that sort of motivated me to sort of do some tutorials and everything. But they unlocked some things that were really helpful. And because I had seen Grasshopper as just this tool for building really crazy stuff,
Yes. Yeah.
like
Right.
really only building crazy stuff.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
if you had to build something usual, don't use Grasshopper.
Yep.
Use like
Mhm.
the typical tools. But it made
Yes.
me realize that you could use Grasshopper for
Yes.
any part of the form documentation process,
Yeah. Because you
uh,
can manipulate
model
so
making
much.
process.
Right.
Yes,
Exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. and so I kind of started seeking every opportunity I could on every project I worked on to sort of do something new or learn something new about how to build these, parametric models,
Mm.
models that are relational, where different pieces, different dimensions are related to one another. And when you change one, other things change, and it's sort of adaptive and connected, and adaptive in the sense that, like, if somebody asks for a change, certain requests can be handled very quickly because you
Right.
say, oh, instead of a 2, it's now a 3.
Mm.
But there were challenges as well of whenever somebody says, I want this to be square instead of round, and you've built the whole logic on the thing
Oh,
being round
yeah. Oh, my
or
gosh. Yeah.
something, and then you would be forced to sort of rewrite
Right. Yeah.
those relationships and kind of
Mm.
rewrite the script in a sense. And that pressure was also good for me. Sometimes it created some
Mhm.
awkward moments where it was like, hey, I can change this quickly, and then somebody really changes the rules on me, and I say, okay, well, now I have to really change
Yeah.
things.
Yep.
And there were a lot of furnishing projects. So,
Mm.
one of the key projects was the Dilworth Park project, which we did all of these different benches that kind of went through this evolution And ultimately, the tools helped with documentation as well and rationalizing certain things so that we didn't have a unique
Yeah.
piece, every single piece of, veneer or whatever.
Right.
And yeah, so those the tools were really good for furnishings, and they made a lot of sense to do these custom furnishings that where you had repeated elements, or you had elements, you have a profile that's being chopped up into pieces, and trying to model that over and over
Mm.
from
Yeah.
scratch would have been totally prohibitive.
Mm-hmm,
you know
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
you'd have to have, typically the way that process works is you draw the section, you draw the plan and everything, and then you have somebody model it on the team, which it was often me. but but with the approach that we took, it made it more a process of, once we had the model and the parametric model, the team could say, we want more of this or more of that, and we could change those parameters or change those relationships a little bit, and have a new model in a relatively a quick period of time.
Mm.
That was actually one of the most complicated, like, early projects we did,
Wow.
and so that was also a big challenge. I think the team realized that I was diving in and learning some new things, and much credit to Richard Rourke for holding his tongue and having patience at many times. But it helped us with the documentation process, but we certainly learned a lot of things. We
Right.
use that, we use those models to then document plans and sections and elevations of the benches as well. So it was,
Yeah. I mean, and that streamlines, yeah, and that streamlines like everything that you need to do, like the documentation process. It's like,
right.
not that you skip it entirely, but that you can get it done so much faster. I'm pretty sure with accuracy, even more accuracy with modeling. And the good thing is about doing modeling is that it's you can do that in any industry, in any, you know, not industry, but like I guess in anything. You can do it in architecture, you can do it in landscape, you can do it in interior, like you can do modeling in so many different ways. And that's just the benefit of that, is that you can visualize things so much faster and so much more accurately. And to be able to use Grasshopper within the landscape architecture industry is actually really, really cool, because I remember doing, when I did my 5-year program, you know, the lab, like the cool robotics lab that we had, all of the landscape or all of the architecture students were doing that. We're doing Grasshopper, and you were encouraged to still learn it, but it was like unnecessary. It was kind of like, well, I could be using my focus elsewhere right now. Like it's not needed. But I really wish that I had pushed myself to do it, because it actually is becoming something that I think firms should be using. You can manipulate things. You can make really cool parametric designs. Like you could do some really neat things, like what you have behind you. You could do that, which I really
Yeah.
want to talk about, by the way.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
I kind of want, there was sort of a thread I was starting with the bench design, so, and it actually ties in nicely with some of what you just said, which is that using parametric modeling in landscape has been a challenge, clearly.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
it's you, and when you were in school, you didn't see the payoff, because
Right.
probably the amount of difficulty that was there to learn Grasshopper was too great to, like, to get a
Yes.
payoff, to
Mm-hmm.
really save yourself time or really change your
Yes.
process. And
Right.
I think, if you're building a simple surface or a facade or repeating elements, that's one thing in architecture, and that's, a very common usage.
Right.
And so students can get into it quickly. Whereas with landscape, you're immediately faced with all these difficult forms and geometric problems. And topography is a very strange piece of geometry, right?
Yes.
There's
Yes.
nothing rational about it, and when it is, it's suddenly in the way of the
Mm-hmm.
way decided to model this thing, which is maybe a smooth way. And so it's like, how do you do this thing that's smooth and sharp?
Yeah.
And then, paving design,
Yes. Yeah.
is often either really, really simplify, you have to really simplify and say, okay, we're going to use this pattern and just fill with this pattern, or we're
Right.
going to, or we're going to do this little thing by hand and it's going to take forever. And then planting design is really complicated because you have all these factors of like, where can things go, right place for the
Right.
right plant in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what does the plant need is really determining that.
So many factors. Yes.
So many factors.
So many
And
factors.
yeah, and that's sort of, those are the things that I've been trying to address with LandKit, our plugin, and sort of trying to make those operations easier for landscape architects to jump in and actually use tools that are focused on solving those problems in particular. The more recently, we've actually started to look at how do you even sort of help people who don't know Grasshopper, who haven't been exposed to it, and provide workflows that allow people to kind of get some benefit out of this parametric, design process without having to build that Grasshopper stuff. So we're trying to address that for students like you were,
Yeah.
and create that payoff for them, but also for designers who are just, being asked to build that model again, or iterate through a design, a paving design, to be able to do the option that they've been asked to do by the partner and the associate, but also to be able to come up with something that they think is cool too, and have enough time to do all of that, with the, hopefully with the efficiency of the tools. And then ultimately having those capabilities sets us up for, the ability to innovate as well.
Right.
So
Exactly.
having that sort of framework of those things allows, firms like ours and some really talented kind of computational designers that are out there to really take those tools and put them together in unique ways and build workflows that are unique. And while the thing behind me was not LandKit, there's a lot of principles there that
exactly.
I'm using. I'll grab it here.
Yay! Oh my gosh! Yes, I love it.
A 3D printed pet brace by 3D Pets, and I worked with them on this design, and it's a computational design. So you bring in the custom scan of a dog, and then the tool actually helps to build a custom form for the dog, right?
So cool.
And it's like topography, right? We're changing things topographically across the whole form of the dog, and we're making accommodations obviously for connections of the leg, and they designed this 3D printed foot actually, which is sort of shock absorbent, and then the other straps and things like that. We recently had this featured on Apple.
So amazing! Congratulations!
They did a shot by iPhone campaign, which was really kind of a surprise and exciting. I didn't know it was happening until after. I didn't know it was really happening until after it released, because they had all these, NDAs and everything.
Wow. Oh, you must have felt so proud to just see your contribution to that, like that must have felt so good.
Yeah, it was a good day.
Wow.
It was a good day. And it's funny too, because I'm, my focus is really more on landscape than anything else. And, we work with civil engineers, and we work with planners and some architects, and artists. That's, I can't forget artists. We work with plenty of artists.
Yeah.
But this was something that just it's like the right application in the right space. It's essentially a mass customization of a design that you can apply, and it's custom for any given
Wow.
context, right?
Yeah.
Well, not every given dog can use it, but they found a lot of mobility applications for different dogs. So there are dogs with two missing limbs or rear, missing their back limbs, and they built carts for these dogs. So
Mm.
it's the same harness, and then they have wheels. It's pretty cool,
Oh,
and
that's neat.
some of them are really really cruising in these
Wow.
carts. These
Yeah.
dogs
Yeah.
go really fast, and it's amazing because these dogs had never run before.
I just get so excited when I think about what you guys do because it was a frustration for me in school seeing how people were able to do Grasshopper, do these parametric designs. And I just found less of an interest in it because I'm like, why is that necessary for me to learn? Even though they would create these really cool things, it almost kind of felt like there was this gap between the industry needs and software. And so, how are we going to bridge this gap? And it's super cool that you guys are doing that. It makes it accessible, it makes it possible. And not only that, but you're able to do a lot of things that can apply the same principles. When I saw that campaign, I was like, oh, I love dogs so much. So I thought it was the cutest thing in the world when I saw these cool little harnesses. And this, if all the people, it's Land Design, Land Kit doing this, Landau. And I'm like, that is so cool for the profession. I mean, the fact that you're able to bring to light the field, it must have made you feel so proud because you worked so hard to sort of bridge that gap. But and you could see now that it's also applying to other things, other needs as well.
We're working on projects that we can't talk about as well.
Yeah.
So there's some
Yeah.
pretty fun things
Exciting
happening on
things.
that front as
So
well. So
cool.
I was at Olin for 11 years, and then I decided that I could do some of what I was doing for Olin in a broader context for other landscape architects, but also for artists,
Yeah.
for
Yep.
other people. And that was exciting to me, that proposition of sort
Mm.
of changing things up a little bit. And we so I started by working on a big art project here in Philly, big sculpture project by Miguel Horn called Contrafuerte, which is 8 figures that are 3 times life size,
Wow.
made of like 5,000 pieces of CNC cut aluminum that
Wow.
all fit together in a giant jigsaw puzzle. And
Wow.
from the outside, installed, it looks like just these figures that have this topographic quality to them, all these layers. But on the inside, it's insane. It's like this insane puzzle with the sort of a waffle structure inside, and then all of these joints and dovetails and all these pieces that we created parametrically. We sort of parametrically sliced and diced and added
Wow.
all this
Wow.
kind of all these accommodations. And then ultimately Miguel and his team constructed it, which was another amazing feat,
Mm.
of putting all these sort of processing and put on all these pieces together and welding them together. But it's a beautiful sculpture. So that was like a great example of the kind of thing that I wouldn't have done at Olin, and one of the reasons for sort of moving on. When COVID hit is when I dove back into, I had wanted to build my own set of landscape tools. And so when COVID hit, I said, hey, this could be an alternate income stream.
Mm.
But little did I know that the path to that like is going to be very long.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I started building the tools, and sort of from scratch, really. I think there were certain principles that I had learned in the process of doing all of these different modeling projects. And yeah, but I think
Yeah.
I had to sort of come up with a methodology. I wanted to come up with a methodology that kind of made sense on its own.
Mm.
And I sort of started to do that with paving and topography and ultimately planting.
Mm.
Recently, we've added water kit, which is hold just a second. I just want to give this, Andrea. She can cut this part out. Cut this out, right?
I'm going to keep it in.
Craziness of the office.
Water kit.
So water kit, yeah, just this year. Well, I guess when did we add it? Yeah, I guess we released water kit this year. We were working on it last year for a bit. It took a little while, and we're still building a lot of features for LandKit. It's a real process, and we continue to discover new ways that we can benefit designers, and that the platform can expand sort of to include more users, but also to improve the experience for the core set of users and whatever. We think there's a lot of applications for architecture, and there's certainly a lot of value that even folks doing civil engineering could get, especially now with WaterKit, where you can do a volume calculation for a storm event that is pretty legit. Like looking at, by defining different areas, of soil and ground cover and things like that, the system can take all of those things into account, as I was saying before, taking into account, and you give it a value, and it can break that down and give you information about volumes. And it might not be the exact thing a civil engineer would do, but it gets you very close to understanding things while you're designing. Yes. That's the really powerful thing. So you can be moving brake lines and changing parameters and changing geometry, moving spots around and adjusting your topography, all the while seeing where the flow goes, and then secondarily getting values for water volumes and understanding how big a basin might need to be in order to accommodate for something you're doing design-wise. So it lets you kind of push and pull, and it's by no means a replacement for a civil engineer, but it's a great way to kind of meet the civil engineer a little bit closer to where they're at. Yes. And to have a little bit more design control over what's possible. You don't have somebody just telling you, oh, nope, that's going to be too big of a hole at the bottom of your site. You can't do that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. You as a landscape architect can work these retentions into your site more holistically, and kind of really see and understand there's an education process. Yes. When you have these tools that give you a feeling for the organism, sort of, that's like a biological term I've heard before. It's like just getting a feeling for the organism. Well, this is getting a feeling for the organism of the site. The site is a kind of complex thing with living materials on it, and dynamics and circulation and all these things. And how can you get a better sense of that while you're designing? And I think even topography, like students can learn about how contours work better by honestly actually not using contours and seeing, as you change things, what happens to the contours, and like getting a better picture of that.
Yeah, totally. Getting your mind around what it is. Like, I love that word, the organism, because I think we have a tendency to compartmentalize here. And like I say, here in the States, because I was talking to somebody from the UK, and it was just like, they were talking about landscape like an organism. It's almost like a piece of art. All these different components make it all together. But when we view things, there's a civil engineer deals with this, and a landscape architect deals with this. We deal with our own thing, but that's what modeling allows you to do, is that you can cross those disciplines and sort of have it mixed in all together into one piece. It was funny just hearing you talk, because I feel like you have multiple tabs open in your mind. What's that kind of mindset look like in order to start this entire thing and just get those ideas executed?
Oh, I don't know, fear of failure. You should see the number of tabs I have open in Chrome. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
there's definitely some tabs open in my mind.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think I enjoy it. I
yeah,
really enjoy sort of the puzzle and sort of like being inside of kind of this Mission Impossible scenario where it's like I have all these things.
hmm
It can be overwhelming.
yeah,
I can overdo it, and I can find myself in a position where I'm overwhelmed, and
yeah,
that
yeah,
that happens to me a lot. And it's
right.
navigating and negotiating that,
Mm,
and sort of readjusting um, my priorities and what the thing I should be working on, and
yeah,
and then also trying to stay organized. I'm you know a big fan of keeping track of to dos, and you know trying to keep my inbox as far down to zero as I can, so that
yeah,
whenever things are kind of important, there I see them. I just try to stay on top of things, and I know that I'm juggling and acknowledging that. I think that's important though for landscape architects, because they are generalists, and they are juggling a lot of things.
yeah,
Landscape architecture is not one thing, and
right.
it's many things. And so there's the technology, there's the codes and the art, the
All of it.
organisms, and yeah, all these things, and the people, how sites work for people. So yeah.
Yeah. How do you stay organized and, like you said, keep your priorities straight? What's your method of
Mhm.
productivity?
I've been a big fan of GTD. It's maybe this younger generation hasn't heard of it, but
No.
it was a big thing several years ago, really, for tech people. And it's called Getting Things Done. There's all kinds of versions of it. The idea is like, get stuff out of your head
Mm,
onto a to-do list, so that you don't have, because if you have all the stuff rattling around in your head, it becomes impossible to think clearly. And putting things into a to-do list, I like to use Trello, but
mm.
it's tricky, because I find that I put in all these things I have to do, and then before I know it, I've got more to do than I could ever do. And
Yes.
and just be able to move something
Mm.
and say, hey, this is important, and move it up on the list, is kind of a really powerful act of
Yeah.
control, to
Yeah.
say, I've decided that I could do anything and everything, but this is the thing I need to do next, or I need to do after the thing I need to do next, or
Yes.
whatever, however I prioritize it. Another thing is occasionally sitting down and saying, where do I want to be in a year or 5 years? And imagining that, it helps a lot. It helps you kind of begin to point things, even the smallest of things, in the right direction toward getting to where you want to be.
Right.
And then I think finally, just being really open to opportunities when they come along. I've kind of structured the business in such a way that it's like an opportunity magnet. Most people don't know what we do, because we do so many things. Like, we don't just do technology, we do animation and visualization. We have created videos for projects. We have done branding for companies and things. So it's a general design practice that has grown a little bit. I've hired on a few folks who really help carry that load better than I was by myself. I have a really amazing motion graphics person,
Yeah.
Gina, who's also an incredible illustrator. She does all of our like, little characters
I
and
love the
things.
characters. I love the characters so much.
Gina is incredible with all of that, and I'm
So
so glad
Gina.
we found a way to help her do the thing that she really loves to do as well. Like,
Yeah.
that's when I first hired her, I was like, well, I'm not sure I'm ever going to have an opportunity for you to do character animation and designing characters and things. That's not what we do. And eventually we figured out how to make that work. Making those kinds of opportunities work for the team, that's another couple of tabs open in my
Yeah.
mind.
Right.
For sure.
Wow. Well, that's, I mean, the fact that you're able to give her an opportunity to do what she likes to do and it fits great, but has an
Yeah.
identity, and so it stuck out to me and it'll attract a lot of landscape designers and people. And I think everyone, without saying it, wants to nurse, but is not able to in a lot of ways within the actual industry. So,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think it's
There's
good.
always a little bit of art involved. And yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then there's Ben, who he went to school for landscape architecture, but he was more interested in computational design than anything else. But getting out of school, finding an opportunity to do that in landscape is there's not a lot of opportunities to just be that person. And I feel very fortunate to have connected with him. And he can do computational design and modeling and helps with all our, a lot of our grasshopper and
Yeah.
workflows and all of these things. But he's also he's really interested in teaching people how to do things. We've tried to expand that role, and Ben does our office hours and he helps with our workshops. It's really bringing the strengths that and interests that people have and trying to make the most of those. I think that's something that landscape could do more of. In some ways, I think often, and this isn't universally applied, but often the focus is on building people who can do every part of the business really well. And sometimes that can feel like too many expectations on one person. And at the same time, it makes it really difficult for anybody to really kind of expand outward and bring something really unique into the firm. Right.
Yes.
So,
exactly.
So, I,
Oh, yes.
I advocate for more lopsided people,
Uh-huh.
more unbalanced sets of skills that where people maybe can bring certain things and together as a team that they can work together and make something that much more interesting.
I totally agree with that. It's just the corporate environment. When you're in a corporate environment, we want them to do this and that's it. I think just giving people the opportunity to do something that they can bring something so interesting to the firm that might actually bring more business.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it can be challenging to balance a team that is full of people who are specialists and not all the same shape, all the same generalists, right? Because I can easily move this person over here to this task if I know that everybody can do the same thing, right?
Exactly.
And that definitely becomes a challenge for us sometimes, where we have to do these tasks and we're missing that skill, and or we're overusing that skill
right?
somehow. I think that for the individual, it's part of their responsibility to bring those unique skills in a way that are usable. And for example, some of the work that I did and outside of the office in Grasshopper and Python coding made it possible for me to bring it into a context where I felt confident enough to put the team on the line and the deadline on the line. Right. So I was doing art projects on the side of work. So I was doing that extra work, to be able to bring that in, so I was doing grasshopper animations and, agent simulations and all kinds of like little weird things that I wouldn't have been able to bring into the design conversation, if I hadn't really taken the first splash around on my own and made sure that I wasn't just trying it out on the company's dime or the company's,
right.
So there are the realities of a business, running a business, and I want to acknowledge those as a business owner, but also so that I don't get all my clients mad at me for telling their designers to just go follow their dreams. I think you should follow your dreams, but like be real about it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I think that's kind of the conversation, right? That's like everyone's like, why, 9 to 5 job and I want to do what I love. But at the same time, I think that we get to have the benefit of, being in landscape architecture and doing what, we still like to do. That's the cool thing about this industry is that it offers a lot, for you. And so, but I can't really, speak because I love doing the podcast, and the podcast really is like just by far my favorite. And so it's like finding a way to like make an income off of that. That would be awesome. But it would be even better, if I could just like talk about landscape architecture and make money, and it's just, that would be great. But, in reality, it's just like having to just, like you said, manage expectations and, take it day by day, and especially people working at firms and things like that, like they're having to do that day by day sort of thing. And, still find passion for what they do, but simultaneously remembering that like this is a job too, and you can pursue, those passions outside of this, and still manage and still kind of fuel the passion for your job with that too, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Yeah. I think there's a capacity to shape your career.
Yes.
It's not like you don't have to be on one track or the other. I think it's possible to shape the path. It's not easy, but it can be done. And sometimes it's easier or more satisfying than like jumping from track to track, trying to figure out like, hey, what makes me happy? And sometimes that needs to be done. Sometimes,
Yes.
like you need to jump to a different track. It's tricky, especially early on, to sort of know what it is you want to do.
Absolutely. And actually, that kind of leads me into my next question. What makes the process worth it to you?
I think I enjoy a lot of parts of the process, for sure. I enjoy problem solving and coding. I enjoy the satisfaction of seeing something come together, whether it's some visual thing or animated thing or some tool working in a certain way. That's like so much satisfaction for me in that sense. There's definitely, like running a business, there's definitely some financial motivation. I have a family that I want to take care of. And so there's, there's the newer problem of figuring out how it all makes money, and that's its own kind of thing too, that sort of has to be figured out. And people, when I was in art school, I was always like, what am I doing? Like pursuing this idea or that idea? Am I more of a printmaker or more of a painter, or, should I go into digital technology? I had a lot of those kind of questions. And eventually, part of the answer was like, what am I doing? But it's like, also, who am I doing those things with? And I think being a collaborator became very important. My clients are often people who are collaborators, and I really enjoy working with them. And there's something really great about saying, what are we doing? Really asking them, what are we doing? That's super satisfying. Working with really, really cool people and just meeting really cool people.
So. Yeah. And the collaboration part, I totally relate with. Talking to people, being able to do really interesting things and have sort of a color palette, just mixing those colors together. There's just something really special that happens when you're collaborating with people that are also passionate about what they do. And so you can kind of really create some cool things with that. When you were, little Chris, did you ever, obviously the answer is no, but did you ever imagine yourself being here, or, on some level doing something like this, or, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I'm definitely not the superhero I think I was going to be. When I was 11 or 12 years old, I think I wanted to be a graphic designer. So that's not so far off,
right.
kind of, doing creative things.
Right.
But I was also really, really into Leonardo da Vinci. And, I loved the fact that he was an artist, but he was also an inventor, and he was he did all the, he was a Renaissance man, right? Obviously, could do all these things. And I actually homeschooled for a few years, and I had a strong focus for a big chunk of at least one of those years on Leonardo da Vinci, and learning everything I could about him. And then kind of as I got into college and stuff, I started to lament the fact that I probably could never be Leonardo da Vinci, or like the age of being able to be a Leonardo da Vinci was over. But more recently, I'm not saying I'm Leonardo da Vinci, but more recently, computational design has allowed me to look at different disciplines at the very least and be involved and
Yes.
apply my problem solving skills to different things. I feel satisfied that I can contribute and
Be a
on
Renaissance man.
more place than one. Yeah, you said it, not me. Yeah,
Very
I mean, definitely a huge inspiration, Leonardo da
Yeah.
Vinci, and kind of along the way. And this was more like in college, like learning about Buckminster Fuller and his approach to design and thinking on a planetary scale and thinking about all these different systems was always also very inspiring too.
I always believe that there's just always has to be some tie. I think jobs and things like that, it's not our identity, not who we are necessarily, but there is an aspect to what we do and what we love to do that goes back to who we are. You grew up learning those things, wanting to be a graphic designer, but then learning about Leonardo da Vinci and like being able to just have that idea in your mind of just who he was and what he was able to accomplish, what inspired you. And I've been trying to find another word for inspiration because I just feel like it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like just sparked something in you to be able to roll with it, find a way to emulate that same thing, but in your own way.
For a lot of people, inspiration is something that someone's recognizing in themselves.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, they see something and they say, that is something that really resonates with me. It's not
Yes.
just an external thing. It's like something that
Yes.
it's important to them because it's something that's resonates. And I think that inspiration is kind of in many ways, a recognition of potential and, you
Mm,
know,
love that.
of where somebody could go and what their dreams are, you know.
Yes.
Um, I
Yeah.
don't know. Am I getting too mushy?
No, that's what this whole podcast is
Oh, good.
about.
No, it's good. Also, early on, I was really focused on myself, and I want to be able to do all these things, and I want to be great at stuff. And
Mm,
but as I've been working with other people, and the more I work in design and landscape, I'm recognizing how can I help other people? You know,
right.
how can I help other people, and how can I help other
Yeah.
people? You know, um,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that's just like again another satisfying thing, another motivation. Just and altruism. Yeah, we should never begrudge somebody for enjoying helping other people. That's
No.
it's a great motivator.
Yeah.
If we all just followed that, we'd all be a lot better off, probably.
And I have one last question for you. Having a family now, how has those priorities shifted? Have you been able to continue doing what you do, but also just, serving your family?
It's a lot of negotiating, not between me and my family, but
Yeah.
just negotiating those things in your life and how you're going to spend time on things. And when my daughter was born, I almost specifically thought like, my chance of starting a business now are gone.
Yeah.
But then an opportunity presented itself with our work, my wife's work and my work, and it made sense. And it was that I recognized the time. It was time, and so
Mm.
I did that, and then that enabled other things for the family to be more independent, and it ebbs and flows. I think
Yeah.
my son, he's 4, he's
Oh.
a lot now. If there's ever any fear about, hey, I'll never have enough time to
Mm.
really do my career or do the thing that I really love if I have kids or whatever, if I have a significant other, is preposterous, I think. I mean, unless you're in some insanely demanding
Yeah.
scenario, I think that it's worth it. It makes things better.
Yeah.
It certainly makes things very meaningful to have,
Mm.
people that close to you in your life that, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
not a
Absolutely.
requirement,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's certainly, I wouldn't dissuade anyone.
Yeah.
I was sort of ready for, you know, my life to just be different whenever
Mm.
my daughter came along. And I thought that probably meant I was just going to have to be more boring and more, more, less predictable, or sorry, more
More
predictable and more,
predictable, right?
what have you. And
Right.
quite the opposite happened, really. I mean, started the business and I've been doing all kinds of wacky stuff since then. So these things can coexist for sure.
Yeah.
Now, give it, at the same time, I put in a bunch of time into my career prior to ever having kids,
Right.
so that's another consideration. I think that just finding that balance just really depends on the person and their situation and their
Yes. Mental capacity
yeah
too.
yeah. I know
Yeah.
we're getting into the sort of life, the universe, and everything, but I think it's just about kind of paying attention to
Yeah.
things and staying in communication with the people who are most important to you, and making
Right.
sure that everybody's kind of on the same ride.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And you're a cool dad. Like you have like a whole tech business. You're doing stuff for landscape. You're out here speaking and you're doing parametric designs for dogs and like that's pretty cool. So I think that your daughter, your son growing up, I'm just curious to see what they're going to be doing when they grow up, because I know a lot of people who have creative parents or creative mom or dad, it definitely rubs off. Like my mom is super creative. She can look at a hideous house and somehow have a vision for what it will, this gorgeous design she might have in her mind. She just has this ability. I think in a lot of ways kind of spread to us siblings. We all have that artistic side to us, and it is so neat to have that as a parent.
I definitely got a lot of great stuff from my parents. My
Yeah.
dad's a contractor. I learned how to build things and think through
So cool.
things from him. And my mom is actually pretty artistic and was always pushing us into more creative
Yep.
things, and was really supportive,
Yeah.
most importantly, of me pursuing something that was maybe not didn't seem very practical at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I was a kid, when I was getting into art, I saw kids whose parents were artists, and I was like, that is cool. I wish,
Yeah.
I was super jealous, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm very cognizant of that now, and
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
trying to be the best case scenario for my kids, and
Yeah.
you know share with them what I'm doing,
Right.
and play Minecraft with my daughter.
So cool. It's so
Yeah,
cool. I love that.
yeah. She's quite
Cool.
a Minecraft creator and survivor. She's better at both of those in Minecraft than I am.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow. Very cool. Thanks so much, Chris. I really enjoyed our conversation. I'm really excited to see who this is going to inspire. I'm
Yeah.
really excited for Landau and what you guys are doing. I love seeing on LinkedIn too, just the kind of projects that you're working on.
And thank you as well
Yeah.
for having the podcast and doing that. It is a public service to sort of share this kind of thing with people, and thanks for having me on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
Thanks so
opportunity.
much. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Greenside Podcast. We hope you found inspiration in the incredible journey of Chris Landau, from artist to landscape architecture innovator. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us and will help us bring more fascinating stories from the world of design. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue to explore the untold stories behind remarkable designs and the creative minds shaping our world. Until then, keep dreaming, keep creating, and keep exploring the endless possibilities of landscape architecture. Thanks for listening.